Ta-da! Okay, this is my cool NAMM show t-shirt that I got from, obviously, NAMM, and I wanted to show you because I thought it was pretty cool. And also, this is my new microphone that Walter got me so that you guys can hear me better. So I clipped it on, and this way you can hear things clearer. So now we can get started on the second half of chapter 1 of Michelle Obama's book, Becoming. I always have to take the cover off because it's easier to hold the book and read that way. So, happy Valentine's Day. And Walter got me my 2 dozen heart-shaped bagels, so I'm good to go for a week or two. And I got him his cool Star Wars t-shirt and another t-shirt and some books he doesn't know about. So I'm not sure if he's asleep yet, so I don't want to talk about it. Anyway, so he'll see that when he wakes up and goes to another robot thing, some competition. So he's doing that tomorrow in the morning. And then we're going to go to church. Yes, we go to church on Saturday night. Remember, Mom? So we'll go, and then we're going to find a cool place to eat something interesting and see what we find after church. So, anywho, I'll try to see if this light works, and I'm going to read and hope that this is clear. Let me know if I need to change anything while before I go any further into the book. So after you hear, let me know if I need to fix anything. So here we go, finishing chapter 1. At home, I continued to work on my own progress as a musician. Sitting at Robbie's upright piano, I was quick to pick up the scales. That osmosis thing was real, and I threw myself into filling out the sight reading worksheet she gave me. Because we didn't have a piano of our own, I had to do my practicing downstairs on hers, waiting until nobody else was having a lesson, often dragging my mom with me to sit in on the upholstered chair and listen to me play. I learned one song in the piano book and then another. I was probably no better than her other students, no less fumbling, but I was driven. To me, there was magic in the learning. I got a buzzy sort of satisfaction from it. For one thing, I'd picked up on the simple, encouraging correlation between how long I practiced and how much I achieved. And I sensed something in Robbie as well, too deeply buried to be outright pleasure, but still a pulse of something lighter and happier coming from her when I made it through a song without messing up, when my right hand picked out a melody while my left hand touched down on a chord. I'd noticed it out of the corner of my eye. Robbie's lips would unpurse themselves just slightly. Her tapping finger would pick up a little bounce. This, it turns out, was our honeymoon phase. It's possible that we might have continued this way, Robbie and I, had I been less curious and more reverent when it came to her piano method. But the lesson book was thick enough and my progress on the opening few songs slow enough that I got impatient and started peeking ahead, and not just a few pages ahead, but deep into the book, checking out the titles of the more advanced songs and beginning during my practice sessions to fiddle around with playing them. When I proudly debuted one of my late in the book songs for Robbie, she exploded, slapping down my achievement with a vicious good night. I got chewed out the way I'd heard her chewing out plenty of students before me. All I'd done was try to learn more and faster, but Robbie viewed it as a crime approaching treason. She wasn't impressed, not even a little bit. Uh-oh. Now I was chastened. I was the kind of kid who liked concrete answers to my questions, who liked to reason things out to some logical, if exhausting, end. I was lawyerly and also veered toward dictatorial, as my brother, who often got ordered out of our shared play area, would attest. When I thought I had a good idea about something, I didn't like being told no, which is how my great aunt and I ended up in each other's faces, both of us hot and unyielding. Uh-oh. How could you be mad at me for wanting to learn a new song? You're not ready for it. That's not how you learn piano. But I am ready. I just played it. That's not how it's done. But why? Piano lessons became epic and trying, largely due to my refusal to follow the prescribed method and Robbie's refusal to see anything good in my freewheeling approach to her songbook. We went back and forth week after week, as I remember it. I was stubborn, and so was she. I had a point of view, and she did too. In between disputes, I continued to play the piano, and she continued to listen, offering a stream of corrections. I gave her little credit for my improvement as a player. She gave me little credit for improving, but still the lessons went on. Upstairs, my parents and Craig found it all so very funny. They cracked up at the dinner table as I recounted my battles with Robbie, still seething as I ate my spaghetti and meatballs. Craig, for his part, had no issues with Robbie, being a cheerful kid and a by-the-book, marginally invested piano student. My parents expressed no sympathy for my woes and none for Robbie's either. In general, they weren't ones to intervene in matters outside schooling, excepting expecting early on that my brother and I should handle our own business. They seemed to view their job as mostly to listen and bolster us as needed inside the four walls of our home. And where another parent might have scolded a kid for being sassy with an elder as I had been, they also let that be. My mother had lived with Robbie on and off since she was about 16, following every arcane rule the woman laid down, and it's possible she was secretly happy to see Robbie's authority challenged. Looking back on it now, I think my parents appreciated my feistiness, and I'm glad for it. It was a flame inside me they wanted to keep lit. Once a year, Robbie held a fancy recital so that her students could perform for a live audience. To this day, I'm not sure how she managed it, but she somehow got access to a practice hall at Roosevelt University in downtown Chicago, holding her recitals in a grand stone building on Michigan Avenue, right near where the Chicago Symphony Orchestra played. Just thinking about going there made me nervous. Our apartment on Euclid Avenue was about 9 miles south of the Chicago Loop, which, with its glistening skyscrapers and crowded sidewalks, felt otherworldly to me. My family made trips into the heart of the city only a handful of times a year to visit the Art Institute or to see a play, the four of us traveling like astronauts in the capsule of my dad's Buick. My father loved any excuse to drive. I do not like driving. That's Walter, though. He was devoted to his car, a bronze-colored two-door Buick Electra 225, which he referred to with pride as the deuce and a quarter. He kept it buffed and waxed and was religious about maintenance schedule, taking it to Sears for tire rotations and oil changes the same way my mom carted us kids to the pediatrician for checkups. We loved the deuce and a quarter, too. It had smooth lines and narrow tail lights that made it look cool and futuristic. It was roomy enough to feel like a house. I could practically stand up inside it, running my hands over the cloth-covered ceiling. This was back when wearing a seatbelt was optional. I remember those days. Where am I? So most of the time, Craig and I just flopped around in the seat, draping our bodies over the front seat when we wanted to talk to our parents. Half the time I'd pull myself up on the headrest just and jut my chin forward so that my face could be next to my dad's and we'd have the exact same view. The car provided another form of closeness for my family, a chance to talk and travel at once. In the evenings after dinner, Craig and I would sometimes beg my dad to take us for an aimless drive. As a treat on summer nights, we'd head to a drive-in theater somewhere out of our neighborhood to watch Planet of the Apes movies, parking the Buick at dusk and setting in for the show, my mother handing out a dinner of fried chicken and potato chips she'd brought from home, Craig and I eating it in our laps in the back seat, careful to wipe our hands on our napkins and not the seat. It would be years before I fully understood what driving that car meant to my father. As a kid, I could only sense it, the liberation he felt behind the wheel, the pleasure he took in having a smooth-running engine and perfectly balanced tires humming behind him. He'd been in his 30s when a doctor informed him that the odd weakness he started to feel in one leg was just the beginning of a long and probably painful slide toward immobility. That odds were that someday, due to a mysterious unsheathing of neurons in his brain and spinal cord, he'd find himself unable to walk at all. I didn't know about that. I don't have the precise dates, but it seems that the Buick came into my father's life at roughly the same time that multiple sclerosis did. And though he never said it, the car had to provide some sort of sideways relief. The diagnosis was not something he or my mother dwelled upon. We were decades still from a time when a simple Google search would bring up a head-spinning array of charts, statistics, and medical explainers that gave or took away hope. I doubt he would have wanted to see them anyway. Although my father was raised in the church, he wouldn't have prayed for God to spare him. He would have looked for alternative treatments or a guru or some faulty gene to blame. In my family, we have a long-standing habit of blocking out bad news, of trying to forget about almost the moment it arrives. Nobody knew how long my father had been feeling poorly because he first took himself to the doctor, but my guess is it had already been months, if not years. He didn't like medical appointments. He wasn't interested in complaining. He was the sort of person who accepted what came and just kept moving forward. I do know that on the day of my big piano recital, he was already walking with a slight limp, his left foot unable to catch up to his right. All my memories of my father include some manifestation of his disability, even if none of us were quite willing to call it out yet. What I knew at the time was that my dad moved a bit more slowly than the other dads. I sometimes saw him pausing before walking up a flight of stairs, as if needing to think through the maneuver before actually attempting it. When we went shopping at the mall, he'd park himself on a bench, content to watch the bags, or sneak in a nap while the rest of us moved around freely. Riding downtown for the piano recital, I sat in the back seat of the Buick, wearing a nice dress and patent leather shoes, my hair in pigtails, experiencing the first cold sweat of my life. Oh yeah, I'm familiar with all of that. I was anxious about performing, even though back at home in Robbie's apartment, I'd practiced my song practically to death. Craig, too, was in a suit and prepared to play his own song, but the prospect of it wasn't bothering him. He was sound asleep, in fact, knocked out cold in the back seat, his mouth agape, his expression blissful and unworried. This was Craig. I'd spent a lifetime admiring him for his ease. He was playing by then in a bitty baseball league that had games every weekend and apparently had already tamed his nerves around performing. My father would often pick a lot as close to our destination as possible, shelling out more money for parking to minimize how far he'd have to walk on his unsteady legs. That day we found Roosevelt University with no trouble and made our way up to what seemed like an enormous, echoing hall where the recital would take place. I felt tiny inside of it. The room had elegant floor-to-ceiling windows through which you could see the wide lawns of Grant Park, and beyond that, the white-capped swells of Lake Michigan. There were steel-gray chairs arranged in orderly rows, slowly filling with nervous kids and expectant parents. And in front on a raised stage were the first two baby grand pianos I'd ever laid eyes on, their giant hardwood tops propped open like blackbird wings. Robbie was there too, bustling about in a floral print dress like the belle of the ball, albeit a matronly belle, making sure all of her students had arrived with sheet music in hand. She shushed the room to silence when it was time for the show to begin. I don't recall who played in what order that day. I only know that when it was my turn, I got up from my seat and walked with my very best posture to the front of the room, mounting the stairs and finding my seat at one of the gleaming baby grands. The truth is, I was ready. As much as I found Robbie to be snippy and inflexible, I'd also internalized her devotion to rigor. I knew my song so well I hardly had to think about it. I just had to start moving my hands. And yet, there was a problem. One I discovered in the split second it took to lift my little fingers to the keys. I was sitting at a perfect piano, it turned out, with the surface carefully dusted, its internal wires precisely tuned, its 88 keys laid out in a flawless ribbon of black and white. The issue was that I wasn't used to flawless. In fact, I'd never once in my life encountered it. My experience of the piano came entirely from Robbie's squat little music room with its scraggly potted plant and view of our modest backyard. The only instrument I'd ever played was her less than perfect upright, with its honky-tonk patchwork of yellowed keys and its conveniently chipped middle C. To me, that's what a piano was. The same way my neighborhood was my neighborhood. My dad was my dad. My life was my life. It was all I knew. Now, suddenly, I was aware of people watching me from their little chairs as I stared hard at the high gloss of the piano keys, finding nothing there but sameness. I had no clue where to place my hands. With a tight throat and chugging heart, I looked out to the audience, trying not to telegraph my panic, searching for the safe harbor of my mother's face. Instead, I spotted a figure rising from the front row and slowly levitating in my direction. It was Robbie. We had brawled plenty by then, to the point where I viewed her a little bit like an enemy. But here in my moment of comeuppance rather, she arrived at my shoulder almost like an angel. Maybe she understood my shock. Maybe she knew that the disparities of the world had just quietly shown themselves to me for the first time. It's possible she needed to simply hurry things up. Either way, without a word, Robbie gently laid my finger on middle C so that I would know where to start. Then, turning back with the smallest of smile of encouragement, she let me play my song. So that's chapter 1, and we'll get on to chapter 2 in the next video. And I'll probably need to bring my magnifier. This is teeny tiny print. So I hope that was okay, and let me know how that goes. Alrighty, on to chapter 2.